The Great Hall of Station Verith was the most beautiful place in the known galaxy. Its walls were made of crystal that had taken 300 years to grow. Light from distant stars passed through these walls and created rainbows that danced across the floor. Representatives from 12 different species sat in a circle, each one believing they were the most important beings in the universe. Ambassador Turek of the Velen Confederacy was speaking about trade routes when his communication device began to beep. He looked at it, and his blue face turned pale. He stood up so fast that his chair fell backward. "We have a problem," he said. His voice was shaking. "A very big problem." The other ambassadors looked at him with annoyance. High Arbiter Melvax, the leader of the council, made a sound of displeasure. He was a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms. He had led the council for 60 years and did not like interruptions. "What could possibly be more important than our discussion?" Melvax asked. "Ships Direct said. "Thousands of ships. They are coming from the edge of the galaxy." Far away, at the very edge of known space, Fleet Admiral Park Do-Yan stood on the bridge of his flagship. The ship was called the GSS Eternal Dawn, and it was the largest warship humanity had ever built. Behind it, stretching across the darkness of space like an endless river of steel, were 2,000 more ships. Admiral Park was 53 years old. His hair was gray at the temples, and his face showed the lines of a man who had carried heavy burdens. He wore a simple black uniform with no medals or decorations. He did not need symbols to show his authority. Every person in the fleet knew who he was and what he had done to bring them to this moment. "Status report," he said. Vice Admiral Kim Yuna stepped forward. She was younger than Park, maybe 40, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been his second in command for 15 years. "All ships are in position," she said. "The fleet is ready to jump." Park nodded slowly. He walked to the large window at the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Station Verith. Somewhere out there were the beings who had watched humanity suffer and done nothing 12 years ago. A plague had spread across human space. It was called the Verith Plague because it had first appeared near the border with Council territory. The sickness killed quickly and painfully. Within 6 months, it had infected billions of people. Humanity had begged the Council for help. They knew that the elder races had medicine that could cure the plague. They sent messages every day, pleading for assistance. The Council had debated for weeks while humans died by the millions. In the end, they had voted no. High Arbiter Melvax himself had given the reason. "Humans are a young species," he had said. "They have not earned the right to our advanced medicine. Perhaps this plague will teach them humility." 4 billion people died. 4 billion mothers, fathers, children, friends. Park Do-Yan had lost his wife and his 2 sons. Kim Yuna had lost her entire family. There was not a single person in the human fleet who had not lost someone they loved. After the plague ended, the survivors had made a decision. They would never be weak again. They would never beg again. They would build a fleet so powerful that no one could ever ignore them. For 12 years, every factory on every human world had worked without stopping. Scientists created new weapons. Engineers designed new ships. Soldiers trained until they could fight in their sleep. The entire species had united behind a single goal. Revenge. Commander Lee Sora entered the bridge. She was the head of intelligence, a quiet woman who knew secrets that could destroy empires. She carried a data tablet in her hands. "Admiral," she said, "I have the final report." Park turned to look at her. "Tell me." "Council has no idea we are coming," Lee Sora said. "Their detection systems cannot see our ships at this distance. They believe humanity is still weak and broken. They think we are no threat." A small smile appeared on Park's face. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had finally cornered his prey. "Good," he said. "Let them believe that a little longer." Back on Station Verith, the Council was arguing about the approaching fleet. Some ambassadors wanted to send ships to investigate. Others thought it was probably just a mistake in the detection systems. High Arbiter Melvax was annoyed that anyone was worried at all. "Even if there are ships," he said, "they cannot be human. Humans do not have the technology for such a fleet. They are a primitive species that barely survived a simple plague. But what if they have improved? Asked Ambassador Torek. What if they have built new ships? Melvax laughed. It was an ugly sound. Humans improve? They are like children playing with toys they do not understand. In 1,000 years, they might become a minor threat. But today? Today, they are nothing. The other ambassadors nodded in agreement. They had all grown up believing that younger species were inferior. The idea that humanity could challenge them seemed ridiculous. On the eternal dawn, Admiral Park watched the final preparations. Weapons were loaded. Shields were powered up. Every ship in the fleet reported ready. Lieutenant Beekju sat at the communications station. She was young, only 25, but she was the best communications officer in the fleet. Her job was to monitor all transmissions from Council space. Admiral, she said, I am picking up transmissions from Station Verath. They are discussing our fleet. What are they saying? Park asked. Beekju listened for a moment. Then she looked up with anger in her eyes. They are laughing at us, sir. They say humans are too primitive to be a threat. The bridge went silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing. They all remembered the plague. They all remembered the Council's refusal to help. And now the Council was laughing. Admiral Park's expression did not change. He had expected this. He had planned for this. Let them laugh, he said quietly. They will not be laughing for long. He turned to Kim Yuna. I signaled the fleet. We jump in 1 hour. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity has become. Kim Yuna nodded and began sending orders. Throughout the fleet, crews moved to battle stations. Engines powered up. The great machine of war that humanity had built was finally starting to move. In her small office near the bridge, Commander Lee Sora looked at photographs on her wall. They showed her parents, her brothers, her grandmother. All of them had died in the plague. All of them had died because the Council had decided that human lives were not worth saving. She touched the photographs gently. Soon, she whispered, soon they will understand what they did. The hour passed slowly. On Station Verath, the Council finished their meeting and went to dinner. They ate expensive food and drank rare wines. They told jokes about primitive species and congratulated themselves on being so advanced. They had no idea that, too. 1,000 warships were about to appear in their sky. They had no idea that the species they had dismissed as worthless had become the most dangerous force in the galaxy. They had no idea that their world was about to end. Admiral Park Do-yoon looked at his officers one last time. These were the people who had worked for 12 years to reach this moment. These were the people who had turned their grief into strength. Jump, he said. The stars stretched into lines of light. The fleet moved faster than anything should be able to move, and humanity went to war. The sky above Station Verath turned dark. One moment there was nothing but stars and empty space. The next moment there were ships. Thousands of ships. They appeared all at once, blocking out the light from the nearest sun. Ambassador Torek was the first to see them. He had been walking through the station's observation deck when the fleet arrived. He stopped moving and stared upward with his mouth open. His drink fell from his hand and shattered on the floor. But he did not notice. By the ancient gods, he whispered. They actually came. Alarms began to sound throughout the station. Red lights flashed in every corridor. Voices shouted through the communication systems, telling everyone to move to safe areas. But most people did not move. They stood at windows and looked up at the impossible sight above them. The human ships were unlike anything the Council had ever seen. They were sharp and angular, built for war and nothing else. Their hulls were painted black, making them look like pieces of the void itself. And in front of them all was the flagship, a monster of metal and weapons that was larger than some space stations. On the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, Admiral Park Do-yoon watched the chaos below with cold satisfaction. 12 years of planning. 12 years of building. 12 years of waiting. And now the moment had finally arrived. Open a channel to the station, he said. All frequencies. I want every being on that station to hear what I have to say. Lieutenant Beek Juwu worked quickly at her console. Channel open, Admiral. You are broadcasting to the entire system. Park straightened his uniform and stepped forward. His image appeared on every screen on Station Verith. His face filled the walls of the council chamber where the ambassadors had gathered in panic. Members of the Galactic Council, Park said. His voice was calm and steady. 12 cycles ago, a plague spread through human space. We asked you for help. We begged you for medicine that could save our people. You refused, Arbiter. Melvax pushed his way to the front of the crowd. His forearms were shaking with anger. How dare you come here with weapons? He shouted, How dare you threaten the council? Park ignored him and continued speaking. 4 billion humans died because of your decision. 4 billion innocent people. You watched us suffer, and you did nothing. You called us primitive. You called us unworthy. You said that our lives did not matter. On the bridge, Vice Admiral Kim Yuna monitored the tactical displays. Enemy ships were beginning to move, but they were slow and disorganized. The Council had never expected an attack. Their defenses were scattered across the galaxy. Admiral, she said quietly, their nearest reinforcements are 6 hours away. We have complete control of this system. Park nodded slightly, but kept his eyes on the screen showing the council chamber. He wanted to see their faces. He wanted to see the fear. Today, we are here to show you that you were wrong, Park continued. Humanity is not primitive. Humanity is not weak. We have built this fleet with our own hands, using technology that your scientists said was impossible. Every ship you see represents the determination of a species that refused to die. In the council chamber, the ambassadors were arguing among themselves. Some wanted to fight. Others wanted to surrender. High Arbiter Melvax was screaming orders that no one was following, Captain. Kohyami sat in the command chair of the Silent Blade, a small ship that had been designed for stealth operations. Her vessel was positioned behind the station, invisible to their sensors. She had 20 crew members, all of them specialists in sabotage and infiltration.
Captain,
her weapons officer said, we have locks on the station's shield generators and communication arrays. Ready to fire on your command? Joe. Hyami shook her head. Not yet. The Admiral wants to give them a chance to evacuate the civilians first. Okay, a chance they never gave us, the weapons officer muttered. We are not them, Cho Hyami said firmly. That is the whole point. Back on the Eternal Dawn, Admiral Park was finishing his message. You have 1 hour to evacuate all civilian personnel from Station Verith. Medical staff, maintenance workers, families of diplomats, anyone who was not part of the decision to let our people die may leave safely. We will not fire on evacuation shuttles. High Arbiter Melvax finally managed to reach a communication console. His gray face appeared on the screen next to Park's image. You cannot do this, he screamed. This is an act of war. The Council will destroy you. Park looked at Melvax with eyes that held no emotion. The Council had 12 years to apologize, 12 years to offer compensation, 12 years to show any sign of regret. You did nothing. Now it is too late. We will call our fleets. Melvax threatened. We will crush you like insects. Your fleets are far away, Park said. We calculated the response times very carefully. By the time they arrive, this station will be gone. And then we will come for them too. The communication channel closed. On Station Verith, panic had taken complete control. Civilians ran toward the shuttle bays, pushing and shoving to escape. Diplomats who had never known fear in their lives were crying and begging for mercy. Lieutenant. Beek Juwu intercepted hundreds of transmissions from across the galaxy. Species that had ignored humanity for centuries were now sending frantic messages. They wanted to know what was happening. They wanted to know if they were next, Admiral Beek Juwu said. The entire galaxy is watching. News networks are broadcasting our fleet live, Good Park said. Let them watch. Let them learn. In the medical bay of the flagship, Dr. Jung-heen was preparing for casualties. She knew that the coming battle would be violent. Ships would be destroyed. People would be hurt. Her job was to save as many lives as possible. She had been a young doctor during the plague. She had watched patients die in her arms while the council debated whether to help. She had made a promise to herself that she would never feel that helpless again. "All medical teams ready," she reported. "We can handle up to 500 casualties." Chief Engineer Shin Yoon-ji was monitoring the ship's power systems. She had designed the reactors that powered the fleet, fusion cores that generated more energy than anything the Council had ever built. Every ship in the human fleet was faster, stronger, and more powerful than its alien equivalent. "The power level's stable," she said. "All weapons charged and ready." The hour passed slowly. Evacuation shuttles streamed away from Station Verath like insects fleeing a fire. The human fleet let them go, just as Admiral Park had promised. They scanned each shuttle to make sure no weapons were hidden, but they did not fire. Vice Admiral Kim Yuna counted the shuttles as they left. "Civilian evacuation complete," she finally announced. "Only military personnel and council members remain on the station." Admiral Park stood up from his command chair. He looked around the bridge at his officers. These were the people who had given everything to reach this moment. They had sacrificed years of their lives. Some had lost families. All of them carried the weight of 4 billion deaths. "Today we are not just fighting for revenge," Park said. "We are fighting to show the galaxy that humanity will never be ignored again. We are fighting for every person who died in the plague. We are fighting for every child who will never know their parents because the Council decided our lives were worthless." He paused and took a deep breath. The Council had their chance for peace. They chose to let us die. Now they will face the consequences. He turned to Kim Yuna and gave the order that would change the galaxy forever. "Begin the attack." The first shot came from the eternal dawn. A beam of blue light, brighter than a star, cut through space and struck the shields of Station Verath. The shields that the Council had called unbreakable. The shields that had protected the station for 300 years. They lasted 14 seconds. Weapons. Officer Han Dong-wook had spent 7 years studying Council technology. He had taken apart captured weapons and put them back together. He had learned how they worked and found their weaknesses. Then he had built something better. "Shields are down," he reported. His voice was calm, like he was reading a weather report. "All batteries have clear targets." Vice Admiral Kim Yuna gave the next order. "All ships fire at will." 2,000 warships opened fire at once. The darkness of space lit up with weapons fire. Missiles streaked toward the station. Plasma beams cut through metal like knives through paper. Explosions bloomed across the station's surface, each one tearing away another piece of the structure. Inside Station Verath, chaos had become disaster. Walls collapsed. Fires spread through corridors. The emergency systems tried to contain the damage, but they had not been designed for an attack like this. High Arbiter Melvax stumbled through the burning halls with a small group of council members. His fine robes were torn and dirty. His forearms waved uselessly as he tried to find a way to escape. "This cannot be happening," he kept saying. "This cannot be happening." But it was happening, and it was only going to get worse. From the bridge of the eternal dawn, Admiral Park watched the destruction with a face made of stone. He felt no joy in what he was seeing. Revenge, he had learned long ago, did not bring back the dead. But it could prevent future injustice. It could teach the galaxy that humanity was not to be ignored. Admiral Lieutenant Baek Ji-woo said, "Enemy ships entering the system. 200 vessels. Valen Confederacy markings." Park turned to look at the tactical display. The Velen fleet had arrived faster than expected. They were brave, he had to admit. Foolish, but brave. "Captain Yoon," he said into the communication system, "your wing has the intercept." Captain Yoon Taiwan commanded the destroyer Righteous Fury. He was a young officer, only 32, but he had proven himself in dozens of training exercises. His wing consisted of 50 fast attack ships, each one designed for close combat. "Understood, Admiral," Yoon Taiwan replied. "We will handle them." The Righteous Fury led its wing away from the main fleet and moved to meet the Velen ships. The two forces approached each other at incredible speed, weapons already charging. The Velen commander sent a message demanding surrender. Yun Taiwan did not bother to reply. He simply gave the order to fire. Human ships were faster than Velen ships. They were also more maneuverable. While the Velen vessels tried to form defensive lines, human destroyers danced around them, striking from unexpected angles. Missiles found weak points in shields. Plasma beams cut through armor. In 20 minutes, it was over. The Velen fleet was destroyed. Only scattered debris remained where 200 ships had been. Enemy fleet eliminated, Yun Taiwan reported. There was no celebration in his voice, just the quiet satisfaction of a job completed. Back at Station Verith, the main attack continued. The station was breaking apart now, huge sections tearing away and falling into space. Fires had spread to the central core, threatening the power systems on the Silent Blade. Captain Cho Hyemi received new orders. Her stealth ship moved through the debris field, invisible to sensors. Her target was the station's central archives, where all council records were stored. "Boarding teams ready," she announced. "We are going in." The Silent Blade attached to a damaged section of the station. An airlock opened, and 20 Marines poured through, led by Sergeant Major Kong Mai. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons that could cut through walls. Kong had been a soldier for 20 years. She had fought in border conflicts before the plague. She had lost her husband and her daughter to the sickness. Now she led the best fighting force humanity had ever created. "Move fast," she ordered. "Archives are in the central section. Watch for survivors." The Marines moved through the burning corridors with practiced efficiency. They encountered pockets of resistance, station security guards trying to stop them. These fights were short. Human weapons and armor were simply better than anything the Council had. They found counselors hiding in storage rooms, diplomats cowering in offices. Kong Murray's Marines secured each one without unnecessary violence. They were prisoners now, not enemies. Sergeant Major, one of her soldiers, called. "We found the archives." The Central Archive was a massive room filled with computer systems. Every decision the Council had ever made was stored here. Every vote. Every debate. Every time they had decided to let a younger species suffer, Kong Murray connected a device to the main computer, began downloading everything. "Admiral," she said into her communicator, "we have the archives. Downloading now." "Excellent work, Sergeant Major," Park replied. "Extract when ready." As the download completed, Kong Murray noticed a specific file in the database. It was the recording of the Council vote on whether to help humanity during the plague. She opened it and watched for a moment. The video showed High Arbiter Melvax laughing as he cast his vote against helping humanity. "Let them die," he had said. "The galaxy will not miss such a weak species." Kong Mai saved the file separately. The galaxy needed to see this. Outside the station, the battle was ending. The massive structure that had stood for centuries was now a burning wreck. Escape pods launched from damaged sections, carrying survivors who would be picked up and held as prisoners. Chief Engineer Shin Yonji reported from the engine room. "Admiral, some of our ships have taken damage. Nothing serious. Repair crews are already working. Casualties?" Park asked. 12 wounded. No deaths." Park nodded slowly. 12 wounded out of a fleet that had just destroyed the center of galactic power. The Council had never faced an enemy like humanity before. Lieutenant Beek Jiwoo was monitoring transmissions from across the galaxy. "Admiral, news of our victory is spreading. Every species in the Council is receiving reports. They are terrified," Good Park said. "Fear is a better teacher than pain." On the Silent Blade, Captain Cho Hyemi watched as the Marine teams extracted from the station. They had everything they needed. The archives would prove to the galaxy exactly why humanity had come seeking justice. High Arbiter Melvax was among the prisoners being transported to holding cells. His fine robes were burned and torn. His gray skin was covered in dust and blood. He no longer looked like the leader of the most powerful organization in the galaxy. He looked like what he truly was, a small being who had made a terrible mistake. Admiral Park ordered the fleet to hold position. The first phase of the war was complete. Station Verith was destroyed. The council leadership was captured. The archives were secured. But the war was not over. 12 species had voted to let humanity die. 12 species had watched 4 billion people suffer without lifting a hand to help. Justice demanded that each of them answer for what they had done. Vice Admiral Kim Yuna stood beside Admiral Park as they watched the last fires die on the ruined station. "Where do we go next?" she asked. Park looked at a list of star systems on his tablet. Each one represented a species that had voted against helping humanity. Each one would soon learn the price of their decision. "Everywhere," he said quietly. "We go everywhere." The fleet began to move again, spreading out toward different targets. The Battle of Arath was over. The war for the galaxy had just begun. News traveled faster than any ship. Before the last fires on Station Verith had died, every planet in the galaxy knew what had happened. The great and powerful council had been brought to its knees by the species they had called primitive, the species they had left to die. On 12 different worlds, governments went into panic. These were the species that had voted against helping humanity during the plague. They knew they were next. They knew that justice was coming. Strategic Commander Osan Wu sat in a small room on the Eternal Dawn, surrounded by screens showing tactical information. He was responsible for coordinating attacks across multiple star systems at the same time. It was a job that required perfect concentration and the ability to think about 17 things at once. "Fleet Group 3 is in position above the Velen homeworld," he reported. "Fleet Group 5 has reached the Torak system. All units are awaiting orders." Admiral Park studied the information carefully. The human fleet had split into smaller groups, each one targeting a different enemy. They moved with perfect coordination, appearing above enemy worlds before defenses could be organized. "Begin operations," Park ordered. "Military targets only. Warn civilian populations before any attack." On the Velen homeworld, the sky filled with human ships. The planet's defense fleet tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Within hours, every military base on the planet had been destroyed. Diplomat Wang Jisoo transported down to the surface under heavy guard. She was a small woman with a calm voice, but she carried the authority of the entire human fleet. Her job was to deliver humanity's terms. She met with the Velen leaders in a government building that was still shaking from nearby explosions. They looked at her with fear in their eyes. Just months ago, they had laughed at humanity. Now, they were begging for mercy. "These are our terms," Wang Jisoo said. She placed a document on the table. "Full recognition of human sovereignty. Reparations to the families of plague victims. Public acknowledgement of the Council's crimes. And a guarantee that no species will ever again be denied medical assistance based on their age or status." The Velen leaders read the document in silence. It was harsh, but it was not impossible. They had expected worse. They had expected destruction. "If we agree to these terms," their leader asked, "then the attacks stop immediately." Huang Jisoo said, "You will become partners in a new galactic order, one based on equality rather than arrogance. And if we refuse..." Huang Jisoo did not smile. "Then we continue until you have nothing left to refuse with." The Velen leaders signed the document that same day. Not every species was so quick to surrender. The Torak Dominion had always been a proud warrior culture. They had voted against helping humanity because they believed that only the strong deserved to survive. They would not submit to what they saw as blackmail. Captain Yoon Taiwan led the attack on the Torak defense fleet. It was the largest battle since Verith, with over 300 ships on each side. The fighting lasted for 6 hours and spread across an entire star system. The Torak fought bravely. They had good ships and skilled crews, but human technology was simply better. Human tactics were more advanced. Human crews had trained for 12 years for exactly this kind of battle. When it was over, the Torak fleet was destroyed. Their homeworld lay undimmed. Admiral Park sent a message to the Torak government. "Your warriors fought with honor. but courage alone cannot win against superior force. Accept our terms, or face the consequences. The Torak leaders asked for 1 day to decide. Park gave them 2 hours. They signed. On the eternal dawn, the crew was starting to feel the strain of constant combat. They had been fighting for weeks now, jumping from system to system, battle after battle. Even with rotating shifts, exhaustion was becoming a problem. Medical officer Jung Hyun walked through the ship, checking on crews and offering support. She found tired faces everywhere. People were running on coffee and determination. "Admiral," she said during a briefing, "the crews need rest. If we keep up this pace, we will start making mistakes." Park nodded. He knew she was right. But he also knew that slowing down would give the enemy time to organize. "We will rest when the job is done," he said. "How are the wounded?" "Recovering," Jung Hae-in reported. "We have lost 23 people so far, all from combat injuries." 23 deaths out of a war that had destroyed the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. It was a miracle, really. Human ships were so much better than their enemies that battles were often one-sided. Navigator Im Cha-hwan plotted the course for their next target. She was young and brilliant, capable of calculating jump coordinates in her head. "Admiral, the Morthax Nebula is 7 hours away. Intelligence reports that the enemy is gathering a combined fleet there." This was the news Park had been expecting. The remaining Council species had finally decided to work together. They were combining their fleets into one massive force, hoping to stop humanity's advance with sheer numbers. "How many ships?" Park asked. 8,000, Im Chae-wan said. From 6 different species, the bridge went quiet. 8,000 ships was more than 3 times the size of the human fleet. Even with superior technology, those numbers were dangerous. Vice Admiral Kim Yuna looked at the tactical display with concern. "Admiral, we cannot fight those odds. We should wait for reinforcements." "There are no reinforcements," Park said quietly. "This is our entire fleet. Everything humanity has built in 12 years. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars stretched into infinity. Somewhere out there, an army was gathering to destroy everything humanity had fought for. "We have 2 choices," Park continued. "We can turn back now, accept partial victory, and hope the Council does not rebuild. Or we can face this fleet and end the war forever." The officers on the bridge were silent. They all knew what he was going to say. "We did not come this far to stop," Park said. "We did not sacrifice so much to settle for less than complete victory. If the Council wants a final battle, we will give them one they will never forget." Chief Engineer Shin Yoon-ji began running calculations. "I can increase engine efficiency by 8% if we divert power from non-essential systems. That will give us more speed and maneuverability." Weapons Officer Han Dong-wook was already checking his weapon systems. "The plasma lances are performing above expectations. I've also prepared some special warheads for heavily armored targets." One by one, every officer on the bridge reported what they could do to prepare for the coming battle. Fear was there, hidden beneath the surface. But determination was stronger. Lieutenant Baek Ji-woo intercepted a transmission from the combined enemy fleet. Their commanders were boasting about how they would destroy humanity once and for all. They were promising to wipe human worlds from existence. "They are very confident," Baek Ji-woo observed. "They have the numbers," Park said. "They think numbers are everything. They are wrong." He turned to face his crew one final time before the battle that would decide everything. "Contact all ships in the fleet. Tell them what we are facing. Tell them the odds. And tell them that humanity does not run from a fight. We never have. We never will." The fleet set course for the Morthax Nebula. The final battle was coming. The Morthax Nebula was a cloud of gas and dust that stretched across 3 star systems. Its colors were beautiful, purple and blue and gold, swirling together like paint and water. But on this day, no one was looking at the beauty. They were looking at the ships. 8,000 vessels from 6 different species had gathered at the nebula's edge. They formed a wall of metal and weapons that seemed impossible to break through. Commanders from each species argued about tactics and strategy, but they all agreed on one thing: humanity must be stopped here, or the old order would fall forever. Admiral Park Do-yan stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn and studied the enemy formation. 2,000 human ships against 8,000 enemy vessels. The odds were terrible, but odds only mattered if both sides fought the same way. All ships, Park said into the fleet-wide communication system. This is the moment we have been preparing for. Everything we have built, everyone we have lost, it all comes down to this battle. Fight well, fight smart, and remember why we are here. The human fleet began to move. They did not charge directly at the enemy, as the alien commanders expected. Instead, they spread out into a complex formation that looked almost chaotic. Each ship seemed to be acting independently, moving in different directions at different speeds. The enemy commanders watched with confusion. What were the humans doing? This made no tactical sense. Then the battle began. Human ships attacked from multiple angles at once. They struck at weak points in the enemy formation, then retreated before reinforcements could arrive. They used the nebula's gas clouds for cover, appearing from nowhere to launch devastating attacks before disappearing again. Vice Admiral Kim Yuna commanded the fleet's movements from the tactical station. She had practiced this strategy thousands of times in simulations. Now she was executing it for real, and it was working better than she had ever hoped. Group 7, pull back. Group 12, advance through Sector 9. Group 3, prepare for missile launch on my mark. The enemy fleet tried to respond, but they were too slow. Their commanders could not coordinate effectively, because they came from different species, with different languages and different ways of thinking. By the time they agreed on a response, the human ships had already moved to new positions. Captain Cho Hayami guided the Silent Blade through the chaos of battle. Her stealth ship was hunting the enemy command vessels, looking for the leaders who were coordinating the defense. She found the flagship of the combined fleet, a massive Vorthan battleship, and began her approach. Target in range, her weapons officer said. Fire, Cho Hayami ordered. The Silent Blade's weapons struck the enemy flagship without warning. Shields failed, engines died. The ship that had been coordinating the entire enemy fleet went dark and drifted helplessly. Without central command, the enemy fleet began to fall apart. Ships from different species started giving contradictory orders. Some retreated while others advanced. Some fired on human ships, while others tried to protect damaged vessels. The coordination that had made them dangerous was gone. Admiral Park saw the opportunity. All ships, concentrate fire on the center of their formation. Push through. The human fleet surged forward. They punched through the weakened center of the enemy formation and emerged on the other side. Now they were behind the enemy, attacking from an unexpected direction. The battle raged for 12 hours. Ships on both sides were destroyed. Explosions filled the nebula with light and debris. The darkness of space became a nightmare of fire and death. On the Eternal Dawn, damage reports poured in. The flagship had taken multiple hits. One entire section was open to space. Fires burned in 3 compartments. Admiral Park had been injured when a console exploded near him, but he refused to leave the bridge. I am not going anywhere, he told Medical Officer Jung Heen when she tried to treat him. Not until this is over. Kim Yuna took direct control of tactical operations. Her voice never wavered, even as the ship shook from enemy fire. She guided the fleet through impossible situations, finding paths through the chaos that kept them fighting. Captain Yoon, she ordered, take your wing and hit their left flank. Sergeant Major Kang, prepare boarding teams. We are going to take their fleet commander alive. Captain Yoon Taiwan led his destroyers into the heart of the enemy formation. They moved like wolves among sheep, striking fast and hard before disappearing into the nebulous clouds. His ship took heavy damage, but he kept fighting. Sergeant Major Kong Murray led her Marines onto the disabled enemy flagship. They fought through corridors filled with smoke and sparks. Enemy soldiers tried to stop them, but the Marines were unstoppable. They had trained for this. They had waited years for this. Kong Murray found the Vorthan fleet admiral hiding in an escape pod. He had been trying to flee while his soldiers died. She pulled him out roughly. "You are coming with us," she said. The capture of the enemy commander sent shockwaves through the combined fleet. Ships began surrendering. Others tried to flee but were caught by human vessels. The wall of 8,000 ships that had seemed impossible to break was crumbling. By hour 12, it was over. 400 human ships had been destroyed. But the combined enemy fleet was gone. Thousands of escape pods drifted through the nebula, carrying survivors who had become prisoners. Admiral Park stood on the damaged bridge of the Eternal Dawn. His arm in a sling, his uniform burned in several places. Around him, his officers were exhausted but victorious. "They had done the impossible," Lieutenant Beakey said. "Open a channel to every inhabited world in the galaxy. I want everyone to hear this." Beak Ji-woo worked at her damaged console. "Channel open, Admiral. You are broadcasting everywhere." Park looked into the camera. His face showed no triumph, no celebration, only determination. "The war is over," he said. "The combined fleet of the Galactic Council has been defeated. The old order that let billions die through indifference and arrogance has ended." He paused to let the words sink in. Humanity did not fight this war for conquest. We fought because the galaxy needed to change. For too long, elder species have decided who deserves to live and who deserves to die. For too long, younger species have been treated as inferior. That ends today. Tomorrow, a new galactic assembly will form. Every species, young or old, will have an equal voice. No one will ever again be denied help because someone decided they were not worthy. That is the future we fought for. That is the future we won. The transmission ended. On worlds across the galaxy, people watched in silence. Some were afraid. Some were angry, but many were hopeful. The small species that had been ignored by the Council began sending messages of support. They had suffered under the old order too. They welcomed the change. Months later, the new Galactic Assembly held its first meeting. Representatives from 40 species sat together as equals. Human delegates took their place among them, not as conquerors, but as founders of a better system. Diplomat Wang Jisoo presented the Assembly's founding charter. It guaranteed that no species would ever be denied medical assistance. It established fair trade laws. It created a justice system that applied equally to everyone. The species that had fought against humanity had to pay reparations. They had to publicly acknowledge what they had done during the plague. But they were not destroyed. They were given a chance to be part of the new order. Admiral Park Do-yen did not attend the assembly meetings. He had retired to Earth, to a small house near the ocean. Behind his house was a memorial park, where 4 billion names were carved into stone walls. He spent his mornings walking among those names, remembering the people who had died, the people for whom he had fought. Vice Admiral Kim Yuna took command of the fleet. She maintained peace across the galaxy, using force only when necessary. Under her leadership, human fleet became a symbol of justice rather than fear. Commander Lee Sora released the Council's archives to the public. The galaxy saw tea. He recorded vote that had condemned humanity to suffer alone. They heard High Arbiter Melvax laughing as he denied them help. The truth changed minds that bullets never could. Captain Shohayami trained a new generation of officers. She taught them that victory was not about destroying enemies. It was about building something better from the ashes of the old. Sergeant Major Kong Murray retired and returned to her home city on Earth. She worked with children who had lost parents in the plague, helping them find hope in a galaxy that had finally learned compassion. One day, a young reporter visited Admiral Park at his home. She asked him what he felt when he looked back at everything humanity had accomplished. Park was quiet for a long time. He looked out at the ocean, watching waves crash against the shore. "I feel sad," he finally said. "Sad that it had to happen this way. Sad that so many had to die before the galaxy learned to treat others with dignity." "But it was necessary, wasn't it?" the reporter asked. "Perhaps," Park said, "but I hope that future generations will find better ways to change the world. I hope they will never have to do what we did." He turned away from the ocean and looked at the memorial walls in the distance. We showed the galaxy that humanity will never be ignored. But more importantly, we showed them that humanity will never ignore others. That is our true victory. Not the battles we won, but the future we built. The reporter thanked him and left. Park returned to his walk among the names of the dead. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange. The war was over. The galaxy was at peace, and humanity had found its place among the stars, not through begging, not through submission, but through strength, sacrifice, and the determination to build a better universe for everyone. The dead would never be forgotten, and those who had wronged humanity would remember forever. What happens when you underestimate a species that refuses to give up?